Hello again, this is K-Rock from the Truth Bomb 1 channel. Subscribe. We got good stuff that's unique, that's sure to offend everyone. And if you're telling the truth, typically you're offending almost everyone. We got some stuff, I'm obviously an end defender, but it goes deeper than that. So we are going to delve into that, and there'll be some stuff here it's basically the intent of this presentation is to identify who controls America, and that's a big source of contention. Let's see if we can figure it out together. I made a quick PowerPoint here to check out, and I hope you like it, and I hope that it puts to bed who's really in control of the U.S. All right, to govern, just think of the word govern or government, or to govern, that just means to control. So you don't necessarily have to have a government in order to control a country. So we're just been brainwashed through our lives that governments control countries because we're evolved now and we don't have kings and monopolies that do it, or cartels or oligarchs. We're a democracy or republic, depending upon who you talk to. So what the issue is, who is the sovereign? Who makes the final decision? All right, again, another way to look at it is who's at the top of the pyramid of power. We often hear about the 1% owners, and we are the slaves, which are comprised the 99% of the people. Well, who are the 1%? As Glenn Beck likes to say, we surround them. Who exactly is them? It's not who Glenn Beck tells you. Who controls America? Spent a brief amount of time in the Marines, and there they taught me the first step in winning victory against any adversary is the very first and most important step is to identify the enemy. You have to identify the enemy. It's logical, because otherwise you might go kill the wrong guy or the wrong enemy. So let's focus on step one. We need to identify the enemy. And the primary purpose of the media is basically to act on behalf of the controllers, to divide the 99% of us and get us split into different camps, whether that's Republican and Democrat, liberal, conservative, black, white, male, female. The more divided we are into these subgroups, the weaker we are. Basically, Democrats and liberals are taught that the thing that is being imposed and that is the cause of all the problems in the world, they're taught that it's capitalism, and that the Tea Party is corrupt because they want capitalism. Republicans or conservatives are trained by guys like Glenn Beck that socialism is the problem. And the people occupying Wall Street right now are socialists who want to destroy capitalism. Both of these mindsets are incorrect. The reason being is the United States is a fascist fascist country. And a way that you can readily see that is, number one, in a socialist country, you wouldn't have corporations. For instance, the military-industrial corporation, the military-industrial complex is a fascist enterprise. The government has formed and colluded with big industrial corporations to furnish military hardware. So you have corporations and government fusing together. The Federal Reserve is a bunch of banking corporations fused together, empowered with their money cartel with the government. Obamacare, despite all the rhetoric from the right, is actually a fascist enterprise because mega corporations have been empowered by the government to have a cartel. It's a health cartel. When his legislation passed, healthcare insurance stocks actually went up. If it was a socialist system, corporations wouldn't be involved at all. All right, so what are the options here? Is the people control America? We got the U.S. government, Wall Street, right? The Federal Reserve, and last but not least, the money changers. Who are the money changers? Okay, let's look at the people. Are the people in charge? I would say that the people are in charge because anger is something, that's an emotion that's carried by people when they feel powerless. So if the people were empowered, they could fix this situation by themselves. They wouldn't be protesting for others to fix the problem. Obviously, the people are not in charge, or they wouldn't be upset and angry. It doesn't make any sense. The slaves aren't in charge. So let's look at the next option, and that is the United States government. So why do we think that the United States government might be in charge? Well, if you watch the TV, the media says it's in charge. You see all the buildings when you go to Washington, and it looks very prestigious and powerful. You got these buildings and this history, and when we were growing up, we were taught that the government's in charge. And we have these elections, and we elect these guys to represent us. And so in theory, that's what it sounds like. But in practice, Congress just has a 10% approval rating. We have elections and nothing seems to help. And I'm not going exactly in order here if you're following along on the PowerPoint. And a couple real big ones here. In 1933, when FDR ordered all of the people to turn their own private property in to the state, it didn't go to the U.S. Treasury. It actually went to the Federal Reserve. So if you would think that if the government was in charge, FDR would have ordered the people to turn the gold into the Treasury and not the Federal Reserve. In 2008, we had the bank bailouts, and the vast majority of people calling into the congressional call offices, to the tune of roughly 90%, Democrats and Republicans were united in their objection that we were going to bail banks out. It didn't matter. The Federal Reserve still got the money. That says that the people are not being represented by their government, and therefore the government actually is listening to some higher authority. They're not listening to the people, they're listening to a different authority, so therefore they're not in charge. Here is a copy of FDR's executive order to turn the gold in, and if you look down and you can follow it, it's turned into the Federal Reserve, a private international corporation. What authority did FDR have to do that? Think about it. All right, so who controls America? Well, who got the gold in 1933 and who got the loot in 2008? It wasn't the people. It wasn't the government. It was the Federal Reserve. So let's go to our next option. Wall Street. Is Wall Street in charge? There is these mega corporations. They're multinational corporations. They have their own security, their own systems of control. They've got these cartels. It seems like they've got endless money. They definitely are corrupt. So let's look at this potential option. Goldman Sachs is one of these Wall Street companies. You got the mega insurance companies, the military industrial complex. They've got plenty of money to bribe the politicians, right? Big pharma, big agriculture. They've all got cartels. It's not on here, but obviously big oil. There's a cartel that's in control. Well, let's just isolate for a second something that makes a couple of these industries unique. The banking industry and the insurance industry, when you go to almost any city in any any state in the country, the biggest buildings are always banking and insurance buildings. Why is that? I have that question. I always queried that even before I was politically awake, let's call it. Well, they are the only two entities which can invent their own product. Oil has to produce oil. Steel companies have to produce steel. The military industrial complex has to create munitions. Insurance companies, when there's a loss, because they're linked to the banking system, they can just create the funds to pay off the loss. So that's something that makes those two industries very, very unique. However, they don't do it entirely on their own. They do it with the help of the Federal Reserve. The Goldman Sachs, for instance, it's a member bank of the Federal Reserve, so it's just it's a sub corporation, let's call it. It's a subcontractor. They go out and they originate the loans that the Federal Reserve provides the money for. All right, so let's look at this Federal Reserve thing. These guys are in the news an awful lot lately. Let's take a look. All right, they can invent their product. That's pretty crazy. And they've been doing it for almost 100 years, and they've not been audited. They got the loot in '33 and in '08, and they're very secretive. They haven't had a thorough audit. Ron Paul's legislation, H.R. 1207, was supported by a supermajority, but they never got their full investigation. Well, think of that. There's a supermajority in Congress. It's rare that there's such overwhelming support for any legislation. There's overwhelming resistance to the bank bailouts, but it went through anyway. So these money guys definitely they've got lots of money to create out of nothing. It doesn't cost them anything, so they can corrupt the system, and that's what's going on. So we can't dispute that. So it seems like there's more weight in this banking system because, again, the oil companies, they can't just invent oil. They have to go and drill for it, locate it, process it. So they have to provide a true product, whereas our money is really, it's invented, and then there's loans placed against it. And one thing that's unique about banking too is, just like the mega corporations, the ownership is secret and often foreign. So they've got unlimited funds. And just think, how much corruption could you create if you had unlimited funding for 100 years and you were never audited? How much could you buy off the media? Could you buy off the politicians? Could you corrupt elections? How much corruption and chaos could you cause? The Federal Reserve itself, when it was formed on Jekyll Island, that was a secretive initiative. The guys went there and on a train, and they didn't use the real names, and you can look into all that with Secret of Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. Okay, we just talked about the money to buy off the politicians and the media. That's a big thing, because if you can buy off the politicians and the educational system, and you can control the reality of the people that live in any society when you can control the truth. You control the history, you control the truth. And by the way, I have a degree in history, and I never learned any of this when I was going to college. None of it was taught. And this is extremely interesting. You know, when you delve into this topic, it's extremely interesting, and none of it is discussed. All right, so there it is. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. That's Federal Reserve note. You can read it there across the top. And Alexander Hamilton, he was he a patriot? That's